Hello everybody! Today is another story time. Today's story time is called Shit I've Seen in Shinjuku. Okay, so basically I lived in Shinjuku for about 5 years, and in that time I've seen some stuff. Like, a lot of stuff happens in Shinjuku. I'm sure if you're aware, as I've mentioned before, Japan's a pretty safe country. But Shinjuku is like the epicenter of everything bad that happens. Shinjuku is associated a lot with like gangsters, drinking. That's where most of the host and hostess clubs are, and generally like night activity. So I think that's probably how it got this reputation. But again, Shinjuku is such a big district that there's like the business areas, the place you go to drink, the place you go to eat. There's so many different parts of Shinjuku, and the place that I lived in was a little bit it wasn't near the center, so where I lived wasn't honestly that bad, and there wasn't like neon signs everywhere and people drinking. It was quite a residential area. The first thing I want to talk about that I saw that I thought was kind of weird is the werewolf. Basically, I used to take the train every single day to work, and I took this train station that isn't used by a lot of people. And after a while of taking this train early in the morning, there was a Japanese salaryman who turned up one day, and while we were waiting for the train, he just dropped to his knees and started howling like a werewolf, like "Ow!" kind of like that for like a good minute. And I was really shocked at first, and it really freaked me out. But I was looking around and no one seemed fazed by this, which was the weird thing. It was like being in the Twilight Zone. Like, clearly this guy is doing something incredibly weird and just no one acknowledged it. And so the second day I went to this train station to go to work, I saw this guy walk up, get in the middle of the platform, drop to his knees, and then just start howling like a werewolf. And again, no one acknowledged it. And so this went on for a while. He wasn't there every day, but I'd say like every week he would be there 2 or 3 times. So I kind of got used to the werewolf guy. And then one day, I guess there was another salaryman who came who wasn't familiar with the werewolf, and the werewolf guy came along as usual, dropped his briefcase, dropped down onto his knees and started howling like a werewolf, going "Wah, rah!" And then this other salaryman was looking around frantically, looking at everyone's faces, and just noticed how unfazed we were by this, and you could tell he was really freaking out. Like, there's this really weird guy, no one's reacting, what's going on, and is it just me that can see this? It was hilarious. And so yeah, that was the werewolf guy. Another thing is Japan is obviously incredibly clean. I guess it depends where you come from, but I'm from London and I also live in Paris, and they're wonderful cities, but some parts of them can be a little bit unclean. So Tokyo, it seems really clean for me. But there are quite dirty districts, and some parts of Shinjuku are pretty dirty. One night when me and my friends were going clubbing, we were walking down the main road of Kabukicho, and there was a phone box. And there was a man squatting with his pants around his knees, and he was just shitting in the phone box. Unapologetically shitting. And I didn't know what to do. Like, I locked eyes with him and that's it. He was looking at me, I was looking at him. I didn't know what to do. So I just waved at him. And surprisingly, he waved back. But the hand he waved at me with, he had a roll of toilet paper in it. So at least he was wiping. And it was like, wow, that's like the most polite public shitter I've ever seen. Again, most of the bad stuff happens in Kabukicho. Kabukicho specifically is where I've seen the more extreme stuff. Like, there's quite a lot of rats. I've seen a lot of rats fighting. I've seen a rat fighting a pigeon. At night particularly, you'll see hosts come out and they'll try and get people to come to their clubs. But sometimes you'll also see a lot of fights, and there will be like a lot of host customers that come up and you'll see them slap the host or start shaking the host, and they're like, "You told me you loved me, why did you cheat on me?" And like, this is quite a common occurrence. I've seen that probably 3 or 4 times. I think this is kind of a nationwide problem, but one of the biggest problems in Japan, I would say, is pachinko. Pachinko is the, like, I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of like gambling. You spend real money and you have to play in kind of like a slot machine, and there's like little silver balls, and there's people who are addicted to pachinko, like the people whose entire lives revolve around pachinko. And you'll see at the pachinko parlors in the morning a whole line of people waiting outside to go in, and yeah, it ruins quite a lot of people's lives. It's really sad, actually. Like, I wouldn't ever recommend playing pachinko. But one time when I was in Shinjuku, I saw a man walk out of a pachinko parlor, fall to his knees, and just start screaming at the sky. I guess he lost all his money. He wasn't the werewolf guy. This was definitely a different guy. In general, if you hang around the area with the host clubs and love hotels, you will see a lot of weird stuff. Like, I've seen a host whip out his penis and another host slap it really, really hard. I've seen a man, I guess this guy was a host, coming out of a host club. There was like a quite famous set of elegant stairs. I saw a man came out like this, completely buck ass naked, and just walked down like really sexily, and he was surrounded by people wearing suits. I don't understand what that was about. I think it was probably like a dare. But yeah, you see a lot of things in Kabukicho. And it isn't just Japanese people either. I've seen a lot of really weird tourists in Shinjuku specifically. I remember me and my friend were in a bar, and this was in the middle of the afternoon. We were just drinking like orange juice, and there were tourists behind us, and like, you know the type, like there is just like 4 white guys with giant backpacks who probably, Japan is probably one destination as they're traveling around Asia. They're obviously sex tourists or like sexpats or whatever, and they were talking really excitedly out loud about like different sexual services you could buy. And one guy was like, have you heard this thing called a love hotel? In Japan, you can just check into a hotel and you can do whatever you want in the room. You can literally do whatever you want. And his friend said, wow, that's amazing. Like, the first thing I would do is just like shit on the floor. And in my head, I was thinking, if you could take a girl to a hotel and like do whatever you wanted with her, and then your first inclination is to shit on the floor, I'm like, what's wrong with you? Like it's just such a disgusting, like, are you a monkey? It's just so gross. I just immediately started to get grossed out by these guys. I just stood up and turned around and I was like, you're disgusting. And then they all apologized and then they left. I was like, why would you have that kind of conversation out loud in the middle of a place that obviously has a lot of other foreigners, and like they could see that we were sitting there. It was just so gross. So like, there are a lot of gross tourists, and that's sometimes for me like the worst part of Shinjuku, is that you'll see a lot of like sketchy looking foreign guys trying to find sex, but then they can't quite figure out how to do it, so they were just like slinking around with their backpacks. I think that's like probably one of the grossest things about Shinjuku for me. There will also be fights, of course, because it's where people go to drink, and where there's drinking, there's going to be fighting. And I remember seeing 2 salarymen fighting outside of Don Quixote, and they were hitting each other with their umbrellas. And at that time, it sounded really, really silly, but I remember a couple of years ago, there was a news report of 2 drunk salarymen fighting with their umbrellas, and one of them stabbed his umbrella through the other one's eye and just killed him instantly. And like, absolutely he did not mean to do this, it was just a drunken accident, and I just thought it was really, really sad. So yeah, I always think about seeing those guys fighting with their umbrellas and realizing now how unsafe that was. And the last thing is something I mentioned before. I think I talked about this in one of my earlier story times, but this is so ridiculous. I cannot believe this happened, so I just have to talk about this again. Me and my friend were walking through Shinjuku at night, and there was a man with a pet monkey just on his shoulder, and my friend got really excited and she's like, oh, I want to pet the monkey, I want to pet the monkey. And I just said, absolutely not. You do not know where that monkey has been. Also, there's a lot of like illegal trade of animals in Japan. Like, I really don't trust that monkey to be safe, so let's just not touch the monkey. And we ended up going to a bar and having a drink. Then, I shit you not, 2 hours later, a foreign man stumbled into the bar, like clutching his neck, and he said, "You will not believe this, but a monkey just bit me." So yeah, I told my friend, told you not to pet the monkey. That's another thing that you'll find in Tokyo in general. People will have just like random pets like meerkats, otters, hedgehogs and stuff like that, but they'll take them outside. And again, some of these are not safe, so I wouldn't recommend just like going up and touching them. So yeah, those are some of the things that I personally saw in Shinjuku. Whenever I speak to Japanese people and we talk about Shinjuku, they always say how dangerous it is, and particularly Kabukicho. And whenever you come to Tokyo, people will often warn you about Kabukicho because there are a lot of shady things that happen there. Like if you're going to encounter fights, gambling, drugs, in Tokyo, it's going to be there. However, in my experience, I mean, it's been pretty safe. Like, I've been there quite a few times. I've been drinking there a lot. I've been there at like 4 a.m. and I've never really had any problems. So I think compared to a lot of cities with a dangerous area, Kabukicho is not really that dangerous. Particularly, I think, because there are a lot of tourists that go there and it is quite heavily policed. That being said, you should always really be careful, and I think the most dangerous thing in Shinjuku, if you're foreign, is people trying to get you to go to their bar, and then they'll try and coerce you out of money, they'll overcharge you and stuff like that. I actually had a friend from high school come to Japan. I think I also mentioned this in the previous story, but him and his friends were walking around Kabukicho. They are not familiar with Tokyo at all. They didn't know any Japanese, and a catcher, someone came up to them and solicited them and said that there was a bar with lots of beautiful women and the beautiful women wanted to speak to them, which of course this is ridiculous. Like, honestly, I don't want to victim blame, but this is kind of stupid. Like, I don't know why they followed this guy, but they ended up following this guy and going to a bar where there were a couple of women there and drinking, and then all of them woke up and their wallets were gone and just all their stuff was taken, and obviously they're tourists in Japan, so it was a pretty bad time. They had their passports taken and all their money taken, but thankfully they were able to go to their respective embassies and sort it out. So it is something that can happen. When you're in Shinjuku, please have a really nice time. There's a lot of interesting, fun things to do there. It's really good for nightlife and drinking, but also be careful and don't follow anyone into any sketchy bars. Just keep your wits about you, and I wouldn't suggest getting that drunk either. Let me know your stories if you've ever been to Shinjuku, or if you've ever seen anything weird in Shinjuku. I feel like if you have been to Shinjuku, you have a story. Everyone I've ever spoken to who lives in Japan has a story in Shinjuku. But as always, everybody, stay safe. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe.